Intermediate Accounting 2, Lecture 2, Accounting 24, Employee Benefits. The following are the learning objectives: account for defined contribution plan, account for defined benefit plans, state the accounting procedures for defined benefit plans. What are employee benefits? Employee benefits are all forms of consideration given by an entity in exchange for service rendered by employees or for the termination of employment. So, other than the salary of the employees, some companies give them additional forms of consideration, bonus, or uh, benefit like living allowance and other form of benefits. So later, we will discuss the four benefits according to PAS 19R or the PAS 19 revised. The PAS 19 revised covers the accounting for the post-employment benefit.
For the purpose of this standard, employee include directors and other management personnel. The standard enumerates the following employee benefits: A. Post-employment benefits, B. Short-term employee benefits, C. Other long-term employee benefits, and D. Termination benefits. We will focus on letter A. Post-employment benefits. Letter B. Short-term employee benefits. From the word short-term, example of this is compensated absences. So, yung mga benefit na natatanggap ng employee in short-term period. So, compensated absences, yung sinasweldohan pa rin sa employee kahit na nag-absent siya. Example, vacation leave. Or, short-term employee benefits also includes short-term bonuses. While letter C, other long-term employee benefits, it may also include bonuses, yung mga long-term employee bonus. So, nagpo-fall siya under letter C. Sa letter D naman, termination benefits, pag may terminate na employee, usually may binibigay na benefit si entity. And that is classified as termination benefits. Sa letter B, short-term employee benefits, other examples is, for example, car, housing, yung mga benefit na binibigay ni employer kay employee. Letter A, post-employment benefits. So what is post-employment benefit? We will discuss that later on the next slide. Post-employment benefits are employment benefits other than termination benefits and short-term employee benefits which are payable after completion of employment. So, from the word post, so these are benefits payable pa after na nakompleto ni employee yung services niya for the employer or for the entity. Post-employment benefits include letter A, retirement benefits. So, pag nag-retire si employee, tapos na siya sa employment niya, merong pension, merong lump sum payments on retirement. So, that is considered as post-employment benefit. Letter B, post-employment life insurance, and C, post-employment medical care. The post-employment benefit plans are classified as either defined contribution plans or defined benefit plans. On the Part 1 Midterm Lecture 2, on this PowerPoint, we will discuss what is defined contribution plans and the concept of defined contribution plans. Depending on the economic substance of the plan is derived from its principal terms and condition. Such plans may be contributory or non-contributory, funded or unfunded. So let's discuss the concept of contributory, non-contributory, funded or unfunded plans. Contributory versus non-contributory. Under a contributory plan, both the employer and the employee make contributions to the retirement benefits plan, while under non-contributory plan, only the employer makes contribution to the retirement benefit plan. So, under contributory plans, since both the employer and employee makes contribution, therefore, they both share in the retirement benefit cost. While under non-contributory plan, only the employer shoulders the retirement benefit cost. Funded and unfunded. Funding is the transfer of assets to an entity called the retirement fund, which is separate from the reporting entity for the purpose of meeting obligations arising from the retirement benefit plan. So, under a funded plan, from the word funded, merong pondo na nakaseparate that is intended for the retirement benefits of the employee. While unfunded naman, from the word unfunded, walang fund na separate. So, without the establishment of a separate fund, upon the retirement of the employee now has the obligation for the payment of the retirement benefits. So, uh, regardless kung funded or unfunded, pwedeng yung retirement benefit ni employer is defined benefit or defined contribution plan. So, usually, pag para hindi mahirapan si employer, merong separate fund intended for making payments for the future retirement benefits of the employee. So, upon the retirement of the employee, those funds will be used by the employer for making payment to the employee, to the retired employee for their future retirement, for their retirement benefits. Defined contribution plan is a post-employment benefits plan under which an entity pay fixed contribution into a separate entity known as the fund. So, from the word defined contribution, fix yung contribution ni employer. Yun lang. Regardless kung anong mangyari sa fund, wala nang pakialam si employer. The entity will have no legal or constructive obligation to pay further contribution if the fund does not hold sufficient asset to pay all employee benefits relating to employee service in the current and prior periods. So, since the entity makes a specific amount of contribution, and dito kasi hindi naka-define yung benefit, meaning walang exact amount, hindi naka-specify yung retirement benefit na mare-receive ni employee. Since under sa defined contribution plan, yung naka-define lang is yung contribution ni employer. So, therefore, ano mang mangyari doon sa fund, i-assume ni employee yung investment risk doon. So, kung ma-manage ng maganda yung fund, edi maganda para sa part ni employee. However, pag for example, hindi siya ma-manage ng maganda, so lumiit yung fund, then the employee now will bear the loss. Kasi nga, under defined contribution plan, fix ang contribution ni employer and wala na siyang pakialam, wala na siyang legal or constructive obligation to pay further contributions. Kung ano man yung ma-accumulate sa fund pagdating ng retirement date, yun lang yung ma-receive ni employee. So, pag yung na-accumulate sa fund is malaki, edi maganda sa part ng employee. Pero pag hindi, yun lang, syempre, binibear ni employee yung investment risk under defined contribution plan. The contribution is definite, but the benefit is indefinite. Depende kung anong mangyari sa fund. So, if the plan provides exceptional investment performance, the employee will share in the gain. Ano yung gain doon? Pag malaki yung retirement benefit. Pag na-manage yung maayos yung plan, yung fund. But, if the plan does poorly, meaning, maliit lang yung fund, hindi siya masyadong lumaki, yung fund, then, the employee will share in the loss by receiving smaller retirement benefit. So, nakikita natin that here, the employee bears the investment risk. Once the defined contribution is paid, again, the employer has no more obligation under the plan. Since, from the title pa lang, defined contribution plan, yung nakadefine dito, yung contribution. Next, defined benefit plan. So, baliktad ng defined contribution. Dito, ang nakadefine yung benefit. Merong exact amount, merong fixed na benefit for the employees.
PAS 19R simply defines a defined benefit plan as a post-employment plan other than a defined contribution plan. So, a residual definition. Under a defined benefit plan, an entity's obligation is to provide the agreed benefits to employees. In other words, an employee is guaranteed specific or definite amount of benefit which is usually related to his salary and years of service. So since defined benefits siya, merong agreed benefits. Unlike sa defined contribution plan, do fix yung contribution pero walang defined benefit. Kasi nakadepende yun kung ano yung performance ng fund. Kung ano yung performance, kung lumaki man, edi yun yung marireceive ni employee. Kung lumiit man, yun din yung marireceive ni employee. So, the employee will receive under defined contribution plan the accumulated fund in the hands of the trustee. Sino yung trustee? Siya yung nagmamanage ng fund. Okay. So, ano man yung mangyari doon, yun yung marireceive ni employee under defined contribution plan. Pero under defined benefit plan, okay, hindi kung ano yung nasa hands ni trustee, pero kung ano yung agreed benefits ni employees. So, in other words, here, an employee is guaranteed specific or definite amount of benefits. So, merong fixed benefit si employee, which is usually related to his salary and years of service. So, the benefit is definite, is fixed, but the contribution is indefinite. Bakit indefinite, ma'am? Kasi nga, kung naka-fix yung benefit, ibig sabihin, pag maganda yung performance ng fund, syempre, pwede na mas maliit yung contribution na lang na ibigay ni employer. Pero naman, pag, for example, poor masyado yung performance ng fund, and then, na-assess ni employer na baka hindi niya maabot yung agreed benefits intended para sa employees, sa benefit na employees, then pwede niya palakihan yung contribution niya. So, hindi defined dito yung contribution. Hindi fix yung contribution. Kasi dito, yung fix yung benefit. So, dito, ang nag-a-assume ng investment risk, si employer. Okay? So, pag maganda yung performance, walang problema si employer. Pero pag hindi maganda yung performance, syempre mamroblema siya kasi kailangan niyang ma-meet yung agreed benefits nila ni employee. So, mas lalakihan niya yung contribution niya. So, here, under defined benefit plan, if the plan is exceptionally good, the entity may take a contribution holiday. Pag sinabi natin contribution holiday, from the word holiday, meaning, hindi muna magbabayad si employer for a while. Okay na, maganda na to. Mamimit na nito yung agreed benefits para sa employee. So, okay na to. So, exceptionally good yung performance ng fund, then pwede muna na hindi mag-contribute si employer. As long kasi dito, as long as ma-meet ni yung agreed benefits, yung mabigay sa employee yung agreed benefits, nakadepende na yan sa employer kung magkano yung i-contribute niya. As long as ma-meet niya, maabot niya yung agreed benefits para sa employees at the date of retirement. So again, under defined contribution plan, fix yung contribution, pero hindi fix yung benefit. Kung ano man yung ma-accumulate na fund at the end of retirement, at the end of the employment of the employee, yun yung marireceive niya. So, hindi naka-define si benefit. Depende na sa performance ng fund. Under defined benefit plan naman, merong fixed na benefit. So, yung contribution, nakadepende actually sa performance ng fund as long as ma-meet yung agreed benefit na para kay employee. So again, under defined contribution plan, the benefit is indefinite but the contribution is definite, meaning fixed. Under defined benefit plan, the benefit is definite, fixed yung benefit, but the contribution is indefinite. Accounting for defined contribution plan. Again, sa defined contribution plan, fix yung contribution. So, accounting for defined contribution plan is straightforward because the obligation of the entity is determined by the amount contributed for each period. Since sa point of view tayo ni employer, ano ba yung obligation ng employer? Magbayad lang ng contribution. Fixed contribution. So, therefore, the accounting procedures involved A, B, C. A. The contribution shall be recognized as expense and the period it is payable. B. Any unpaid contribution at the end of the period shall be recognized as accrued expense or liability. Letter C. Any excess contribution shall be recognized as period expense, but only to the extent that the prepayment will lead to a reduction in the future payments or cash refund. So let's have an illustration. But before the illustration, let us be familiar with the disclosures under defined contribution plan. Letter A, the amount recognized as expense for the defined contribution. Letter B, the contribution to defined contribution plan for key management personnel as required by PAS 24 on related party disclosures. So for our illustration, an employee is a member of the Faculty of Accounting at a certain university. During the current year, the employee earned 600,000 pesos. The employee is covered by university's defined contribution plan, which requires the university to contribute the equivalent of 5% of the employee's salary or 30,000 for the current year to a trustee. See, the university or the employer is required to contribute the equivalent of 5%. So, ano yung fix? Yung contribution. Yung contribution niya daw dapat is 5% of the employee's salary. So, here, since 600,000 yung salary ni employees, 600,000 times 5%, so 30,000 yung contribution ni employer for this year to the trustee. So, assuming yearly contribution, the university shall recognize the contribution expense as follows. Yan yung sinabi kanina. Yung contribution the employer shall be recognized as expense. Yung unpaid contribution at the end shall be recognized as accrued expense or liability. So, debit employee benefit expense, 30,000. Credit cash, 30,000 pesos. Having made the defined contribution, the university's obligation is fulfilled and no further entries are necessary for the university. Again, defined contribution plan, yung define, yung fix yung contribution. Wala nang obligation, constructive or legal obligation, si employer to pay further contribution. As long as nakapagbayad siya ng contribution, yun na yun. So, the university's obligation is fulfilled once he made his contribution, and no further entries are necessary for the university. Upon retirement, the trustee shall pay large or small benefit. Hindi define yung benefit. Kasi yung kinontribute natin dun sa trustee, i-manage siya ni trustee. Kung good ang performance doon, edi large benefit yung matatanggap ni employee. Pero kung poor yung performance doon, edi small benefit yung matatanggap ni employee, hindi fix yung benefit. So, depending on the investment performance of the trust or pension fund. Another illustration. On January 31, 2017, an entity paid 100,000 contribution to a defined contribution plan in exchange for services performed by the employees on December 31, 2016. So, post-employment benefit. Na-render na ni employee yung services. Number 1, to record the accrued of benefits on December 31, 2016, since binayaran siya January 31, 2017 pa, pero actually, na-incur na ni employer year 2016 pa. Na-incur niya na, siyempre, yung services perform ni employee year 2016. So, again, accrual method, recognize expense as incurred. So, recognize employee benefits expense 100,000 and debit credit accrued benefits payable of 100,000 pesos. Number 2, to record the payment of the contribution on January 31, 2017, debit accrued benefit payable of 100,000 and credit cash of 100,000 pesos. Another illustration, on December 31, 2016, an entity paid 200,000 contribution to a defined contribution plan. This is the illustration for letter C kanina. the accounting procedures for defined contribution plan. So, of this amount down, yung fixed contribution ni employer na 200,000, 150,000 down for the year 2016, which is na-perform na ni employee. And 50,000 daw to be performed pala in year 2017. So, therefore, yung i-recognize natin, employee benefit expense of 150,000. Since ito lang yung benefit expense na na-incur na for year 2016. And then, credit cash of 200,000 since yan yung contribution on December 31, 2016. Yung 50,000 naman to be performed in 2017 since ipe-perform rin naman sa year 2017. So, pwedeng i-recognize yan ni entity, ni employer as prepaid benefit expense. And then, on year 2017, pag na-perform na employee yung service, magjo-journalize siya ulit. Etong prepaid benefit expense amounting to 50,000 is i-recognize nyo na as employee benefit expense. So, i-debit niya employee benefit expense and then cancel or de-recognize the prepaid benefit expense of 50,000 pesos. This is the end of Midterm Lecture 2 Part 1.